Well, hello, or ni hao, or maybe namaste. When I was a teenager in the 1950s, but it seems a long time ago now, most of us aspired to having a motorbike. And there was a multitude of makes to choose from. BSA, Triumph, Velocette, Ariels, Norton, Royal Enfield, Vincent, AGS, Matchless, James, Francis Barnett, Sunbeams, Panthers, Greaves, goodness knows. A whole heap of them. They were unreliable. They absolutely leaked oil all over the shop. We had to carry a complete toolkit round with us in our sort of Barber or Trials Master waterproof suits with our helmets and Mark 8 goggles. And the first choice of family car, I mean, they were mainly Morris's or Austin's, Hillman, Wolseley's, Triumphs. Triumphs, I remember. Singers and Fords and Vauxhalls were the main ones. If you were a bit more affluent, you had a sort of Rover or an Elvis or a Jaguar. If something was cheap and badly made and it broke down after a couple of days, the phrase used was, it was probably made in Japan. It was a little phrase used to describe basically rubbish. Anyway, in the 1960s there appeared two new motorcycles. One was called a Bentley, I think, and one was called a Dream. One was a 125, one was a 250cc. And they were made by a company that most people had never even heard of. Honda. They were incredibly reliable. They had, I think they had electric start, I'm not sure, but I think they did. And they also had direction indicators, like winkers on the back and front. And they were high revving things, so they sort of screamed about the place. But the hard-nosed rockers, I mean, they were just a bike for wimps. At the same time, a car appeared, again, made by a company that few people had even heard of. And it was the Corolla, produced by a company called Toyota. And it went on to become the most popular car in the whole of the world. And again, the reason was it was incredibly reliable. And more to the point, unlike most British cars, after 5 years it wasn't just a heap of rust ready for the scrap heap. I mean, the rest of it is history. We know what happened. The British motorcycle industries and the British car industries, in a very short space of time, just disappeared. Tens of thousands of people were thrown out of work. And now it's Hondas, Toyotas, Nissans, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, Panasonic, Samsung, Sony, JVC, Hitachi, it's BMWs, Volkswagens, everywhere. I don't think there'll be a house in the country that doesn't own something made in the Far East. If you look at almost everything from little plastic boxes you keep food in, to computers or whatever, invariably they've got written on the bottom, made in China. It's not difficult to see how this happened. I mean, in the Second World War we beat the Germans and Japanese and smashed them into oblivion. I mean, in 1945 they were just sort of wreckage. We also still had an empire which covered half the globe, and most of our manufacturing went there. I mean, we controlled the monopoly. So we became sort of smug and complacent about the whole business. I've been very lucky in that I've travelled extensively across the world, and in poorer countries everywhere. If you ask children what their ambition is, what do they want to do in life, almost without exception, they want to go to school. They're desperate to be educated. They don't complain about how many miles they might have to walk to get to school, and in some cases it's considerable. In very adverse weather conditions, usually absolutely roasting hot. They don't complain about school uniform. Most of these parents have got absolutely nothing in material terms, or indeed in money terms, but they always seem to manage to get enough together to provide a school uniform. And when you see these children going to school, they're absolutely immaculate. They don't whinge about the discipline. They don't whinge about the amount of homework they have to do, or about the lack of basics such as pens, paper or books. In fact, when you go abroad, one of the most common things is children come up here, the first word they learn is pen, mister, pen, mister. And most people who travel to these places, you take a big bunch of ballpoints with you and buy them so cheaply in this country, and they give such pleasure to young children abroad. As for computers, well, that's another world altogether. One little lad recently became a sort of internet star, in that he was found kneeling outside a fast food joint doing his homework on a bench using the light of the fast food joint, because there was no light at his home. I don't know what he would be, maybe 10-year-old, this little boy. And somebody, having seen the video, has very kindly offered to pay for his education. But there are millions, literally millions and millions of children in the same boat, desperate to go to school. In this country, as in a great many Western countries, we force children to go to school by law. A sizable number of them don't even want to be there, and they cause mayhem whilst they are there, disrupting the education of all the other pupils in their classes, as they, I suppose, they're just attention seekers, and they regard the school a bit like a youth club. And we've seen this in recent TV series, where schools have invited TV companies in to record their daily activities. I suspect for some people it's an absolute eye-opener. But for those of us who've been in and taught in comprehensive schools or secondary schools of all descriptions, we've been well aware of this for years and years and years. I mean, this being August 2015, I just watched a programme about a school in Wales, in Cardiff. I mean, you really have to admire the dedication of teachers in these schools. It's really, really hard work. But in this, the first of the programmes, I mean, one of the senior members of staff, who must be on, I don't know, £50,000–60,000 a year, every morning, he acts as an alarm clock to some born idle individual who can't even bother to get out of bed. I mean, is that really a good use of his time? Is that really what being in senior management in schools is today? Getting children out of bed in the morning? I would have thought that was a parent's job. I often wonder if schools should be made voluntary. You know? If you want to be educated, come. If you don't, well, that's up to you. Don't bother coming, but don't complain when your life becomes an absolute misery and you're unemployable. In another recent TV series, 50 pupils from one of the top 10 comprehensive schools in the country, actually in Hampshire, were taught maths, science, English grammar, Mandarin and PE by 5 teachers who had been brought across from China specifically for this month. And they taught the subjects by traditional Chinese methods. In other words, the teacher stood at the front, gave them all the information, and then once the lessons had finished in the evening, and there were long days, they stayed for much longer than the usual children, they had to learn this work. After, I think it was about a week or a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, discipline in this group of children who were normally very, very well behaved just fell apart. They were larking about big time. One of them even brought a kettle in and started making tea in the middle of a lesson. The headmaster came in to sort this out, and he stayed during a lesson, maybe more than that, but that was what was shown on TV. And as he rightly said, the lessons were mind-numbingly boring. You know, they were an hour long, and it was just spouting away from the front. The teacher never moved away from behind that desk. And the class was very big. I mean, I say there were 50 pupils in this class. And the Chinese teachers were almost in despair. At the end of this month, these children who had been educated by these Chinese teachers, who really only knuckled down during the last, I suppose, week and a half, they sat an examination together with 50 pupils who had been through the normal regime in this school. And to the surprise of a few and the disappointment of many, the pupils who had been taught by the Chinese method, their results were better than the results of the children who had been through the normal education system. It came as a big shock. I mean, in this school in the south of England, the curriculum was broad and balanced. That's how it's described. In other words, you study a broad range of subjects from maths, science, English, history, geography, RE, the arts, PE, home economics, technology as it's called now, computer studies, music. So that's what they call a broad and balanced curriculum. And it's the same at Lawrence Jackson School. I mean, I can remember trying to protect 3 separate sciences, physics, chemistry and biology, rather than go down the dual award science road. But of course, there's a limited amount of time in the day, in the curriculum, and by doing that, it takes some time away from other subjects. Some parents wanted their children to do 2 modern languages and 3 separate sciences. Well, that was denied out of hand. It wasn't even considered. So broad and balanced was the word. And of course it led to a big debate about what's the aim of education? Why are we educating children? Are we educating them to produce a well-rounded person who respects the rights, etc. of others? Or are we educating children for the world of work? I suppose the balance is somewhere in the middle, but anyway, it produced very, very heated debates with the idealists on one side and the pragmatists on the other side, and there was very little common ground. The headmaster of this school in Hampshire, he was rightly proud of the school's top 10 position within the in the English School League tables. But of course, well, I suppose he did realise he's obviously a bright bloke. But what the pupils aren't aware of, and I suspect after this programme had been made, there would have been a change, is that England is only 26th in the education rankings in the world. So if you took the top 10 schools in England and you put them into a sort of global school league table, most of them wouldn't even get into the top, well, I don't know, just pick 100,000. Schools, particularly in the Far East, but not only in the Far East, certainly in some countries in Europe, are streets ahead of British schools, particularly in the important subjects like maths and the sciences, the subjects which essentially are going to produce the wealth, whether it's in finance or indeed in manufacturing industries. I mean, to make matters worse, India, which in the next 10 years is going to be the largest country in the world, has only just started getting its act together. It's got a population of 1 billion, most of whom are uneducated or very, very poorly educated. And over the next few decades, that's going to change dramatically. I mean, in most English secondary schools, French is the first foreign language taught. I mean, what's that about? I mean, it's a very useful language if you like go to France on holiday, or if at some time you intend to live there or retire there. But where else does it feature in global terms? Almost nowhere, I would suggest. German, yes, I can understand German. German's a major powerhouse in Europe, major manufacturing powerhouse. Similarly, Spanish. I mean, whilst it's probably not of much use in Europe, unless you, as I say, you go to Spain for your holidays. But an emerging powerhouse is South America, where Spanish is the first language I think in every country except Brazil, where it's Portuguese. So I can understand Spanish being taught. But how many schools teach Mandarin or Hindi which are probably going to be the most important languages in the world of work in the coming decades. I don't know any. In the 1950s and 60s, Gisborne pupils were competing for jobs against all the other local schools in the area. I mean, for most boys in Gisborne, the big ambition was to get an apprenticeship in places like that giant ICI, which was a worldwide employer, blue chip company, who employed 30,000 people on Teesside, or Dorman Longs, which was the major steel manufacturer on Teesside, or Teesside Bridge and Engineering, of course, who manufactured bridges, including the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Or there was Head Wrightsons or Ashmore, Benson and Pease, who were massive heavy engineering companies. Made, they built places like steelworks, or huge vessels for oil refineries. Then there was Smith Dock and Furnace, who were big shipbuilders down on the River Tees. I mean, for girls it was office work, ICI if you could, preferably. They were the preferred employers, or nursing was another thing many girls went into. And then there was also textile manufacturing. I mean, in town there was a shirt factory. Montague Burton's made shirts. They made other things as well, but that was what it was called. Or Dewhurst, who again manufactured many garments for big high street retailers such as Marks and Spencer's. Anyway, never heard of these? Probably ICI. But it's not surprising, because most of them just disappeared like snow off a roof in a very short space of time, throwing tens of thousands of people out of work. I mean, the major employers in the northeast of England now are Nissan, a Japanese company in Sunderland, and a new factory is built by Hitachi to build rolling stock for railways, will also become a major employer in the area. So there's been a massive shift since the days of ICI and others. I mean, Lawrence Jackson School children, as all children in comprehensive schools in this country, are competing on a global stage with children from all over the world for jobs and university places, for that matter. English universities are very highly rated by Far Eastern countries. More and more of their very brightest pupils, and goodness knows a hell of a lot of them, are coming to English universities. And of course they bring with them a sizable lump of money. And Far Eastern countries are also investing in research and development in English universities. So more and more places are being taken up by the very brightest from abroad. And the universities desperately need their money. So that's what English students are up against. So whilst their Asian counterparts are not very well versed in the arts, maybe know little about the finer things in life, whatever that means. They probably never studied classics or Shakespeare, God forbid. And they speak excellent English. they will also be the big employers in the future. I mean, for instance, how many people at Lawrence Jackson School, or indeed in Gisborough, the whole of the northeast of England, how many people know that the water that comes out of their taps and flushes their toilets is provided by a Chinese company? I mean, it might be called Northumbrian Water, but it's owned by the Chinese, as is Harvey Nichols, Superdrug, and a huge chunk of House of Fraser. They're all owned by the Chinese. China has billions and billions of pounds which is earmarked for investment in the United Kingdom, mainly in infrastructure. I mean, they've bought a big chunk of Thames Water. They're also in line to revamp the complete nuclear power industry. They've got a major toehold in this country, and it will only increase. So, coming back to schools, 5 A stars to C is the magic number at GCSE examination level, including English and Maths. Now, whilst I don't want to denigrate those pupils for whom 5 A's to C's has been a major achievement and required massive effort on their part, but 5 A stars to C on a global scene is meaningless. And in many schools, 50% of the pupils aren't achieving that. And that's a big, big worry. Or it should be. It should be a worry for the government. So, it's all down to that question again, idealism or pragmatism. If you happen to be both an educator and a parent, is it really very difficult to make that choice? And the evidence would suggest that it's not a difficult decision to make when it comes to your own children, even amongst politicians or indeed teachers. Wayang Zi, as our friends in the Far East might say. Look it up. Anyway, Zaijiang, Alvida, do svidania. Goodbye.